Daf Lamed Gimel. We're on page 33b. And yesterday we started this a little complicated Gemara. It's a little unclear as to who is talking to who, and the wording of the Gemara is it's telling us different terms that the rabbis used when they decided a halacha. There were certain terms that they used when it was a definite halacha, or when it was more. In other words, they assumed that the rabbis agreed. If it wasn't so clear to them, they don't have a clear teaching about it. So they had certain terms that they used, and the Gemara here is getting. We're sort of bringing that into really a different conversation. And the conversation that we were dealing with was a conversation between Reb Zera and Reb Chia bar Abba. Reb Zera and Reb Chia bar Abba, they were basically traveling. Now, Reb Zera was traveling on some type of a, he was traveling on a, what is the term it uses? Rachiv Chamra. He was traveling on a donkey, and Reb Chia bar Avin was not. So it sounds like, well, there's a story where Reb Zera got a burn and he couldn't walk. And because of that, that's the understanding here, that the reason why he was traveling on a donkey was because he couldn't walk, and therefore he's riding on this donkey. But Reb Zera is with him, and he's traveling, he's walking behind him, so to speak, and trying to keep up, I guess. And they're having a Talmudic discussion. They want to know what to do when Yom Tov falls after Shabbos, where to insert the Havdalah. That's really what we were dealing with. Where do you insert Havdalah? Because on a regular Saturday night, it's very simple. We know where to insert Havdalah. A regular Saturday night, you insert it right in the blessing, the fourth blessing, or the first of the intermediate blessings. That's where you insert it. It's no big deal. But on a Saturday night, that's a holiday, so you don't have that blessing to insert it. So the Gemara is trying to figure out, where do we insert it? And maybe we should follow the other view, because there is another view that you insert the this Havdalah, this prayer of separating the holy from the mundane, that you would insert it in the modim, which is at the end of the Shmoneh Esrei. So the Gemara is wondering, maybe we follow that view in this scenario, because it doesn't seem like the other opinions really would work. The main opinion, we don't even know where we would insert it, because the main opinion is you insert it in the intermediate blessings of Atachainin, about wisdom, and there is no blessing about wisdom. So that option is totally not available. The other option is Rabbi Akiva's option, which is that you recite a blessing in its own right. You make a full blessing of it in its own right as the fourth blessing of the Shmoneh Esrei. Now that option isn't acceptable on a regular Saturday night, and it's also not going to be acceptable on a holiday Saturday night. Why not? Because the reason we don't follow Rabbi Akiva is because the rabbis established a certain number of blessings, and we are not going to go and change that number. There is a certain Kabbalistic, deeper meaning. There's a reason why the rabbis established a certain number, and that reason, we will not. We definitely don't want to fiddle around and change that. We don't want to change what the rabbis established, and or we don't assume that the rabbis switched it for a Saturday night to changing the number. In other words, there's a specific number that it's meant to be, and just because it's Saturday night, it's not going to be changed, and therefore Rabbi Akiva's view doesn't fit. So what's the only other option? The only option is to do it at the end of the Shmoneh Esrei, which is Rabbi Eliezer's view. Now, the Gemara is trying to figure out, is that correct? So Rabbi Zera is speaking to Reb Chia bar Avin, about this. And there's two opinions as to who's asking who. One of them asked the other one, is it true what they say in the name of Rabbi Yochanan that we follow, that the halacha is like Rabbi Eliezer? So that's what he asks him. And in this scenario, again, it's a Saturday night, that's a holiday. We don't know where to include the Havdalah. And is it true that we follow that the halacha is like Rabbi Eliezer, that you follow the you insert it in the end of Shemon Esrei, the modim, the place where we recite modim. Now, the Gemara says yes. Whoever it was that answered this question, in other words, one of those rabbis asked it, one of them answered it, and they answered. He answered yes, that's correct. And then the Gemara continues and starts questioning this terminology. Halacha? This is the halacha follows Rabbi Eliezer? How could you even say the word halacha here? Halacha follows someone means that others argue with that. And why would you use that term here? We don't know that anyone argues with Rabbi Eliezer. So the Gemara says, what do you mean we don't know if anyone argues with Rabbi Eliezer? The rabbis argue with Rabbi Eliezer. They say that you don't insert Havdalah in the modim, you insert it in the blessing of wisdom. So of course there are those that argue, and it makes sense to say halacha. The Gemara says, what do you mean? We're talking about a Saturday night that falls on a holiday. What are the rabbis don't have a view there. So the rabbis don't say anything in such a scenario. If you told me the halacha follows someone on a regular Saturday night, that would be okay. But here we're talking about on a Saturday night, that's a holiday. And on such a Saturday night, do the rabbis argue on Rabbi Eliezer? We don't know. We don't have any way of knowing that they would argue. We have no reason to assume that they argue. So why would you say halacha, that the halacha follows this rabbi if no one argues? The Gemara says, but you still have Rabbi Akiva who argues. The Gemara says, well, Rabbi Akiva, we don't follow him on a regular Saturday night. We're not going to follow him on a Saturday night that's a holiday for the same reason. The same reason we don't follow him on a regular Saturday night is because he wants to add a new blessing for the Havdalah, and we don't believe you should do that. So we're not going to add him on a Saturday night. That's a holiday because you're supposed to have a certain amount of blessings. So the regular Shemona Esrei is 18 blessings. A Shabbos or holiday Shemona Esrei is 7 blessings. And 7 and not 8. We're not going to do it. We're not going to add another blessing for Havdalah. So, because of this, the Gemara is still bothered with why would you say the halacha follows Rabbi Eliezer if no one argues? In other words, Rabbi Akiva's view is totally not acceptable, and the rabbis, we don't know that they argue. So the Gemara continues and says that one of the rabbis said back to the other one that lav halacha itmar ela matin itmar. Don't use the term halacha, use the term matin. Now, the simple way of learning this is that he didn't really answer. We're not answering that question. We're just a continuation of the Gemara. It's not answering that question. Why he used the word halacha, it's unclear. But the Gemara continues and says, by the way, you don't use the word halacha, you use matin, which also is the same question. Why would you say matin means we lean towards his view? But no one argues. So if no one argues, why would you say you lean towards his view? So we're not really dealing with the question. We're just saying, by the way, he didn't use the word halacha, use the word matin. Or another way of learning this Gemara is halacha itmar, lav halacha itmar, ela matin itmar, that don't think that everyone holds that the same view here. There are different views of how to word this, and that's why I use the word mat halacha, because lav halacha idmar elamatin idmar. There are those that say that it's not halacha and it's matin. Therefore, I specifically said halacha. So it's answering the question by saying not because there are those that argue, but because there are those that have a certain other terminology here, which I don't like, the matin. That some say lav halacha itmar lamatin itmar. Therefore, I use the term halacha itmar. This is one of the views. Tractate Brochos learns the pshat of the Gemara this way, that there are those that use the term matin. Now, let me explain what that means. What that means is that halacha means we are sure that this is the way things should be, and we even would give a lecture about this publicly. Matin means that we wouldn't lecture on this publicly, but rather we would, we're not 100% sure, but we assume this way. And that would be matin. Matin means we can assume, we estimate that is the correct thing. So therefore the term would be the view of matin. And we wouldn't give a lecture about it, but we would, if someone asked us, we would tell them. And then there's another term called nirin. Nirin is a term that it seems that that's correct. That term is used when someone does something, and after the fact, we tell them what you did was okay because it seems that it's acceptable. So again, we have an issue here. The main issue that we're dealing with, I just want to clarify because it is a confusing Gemara. Most Gemaras are not as confusing as this and have different ways of reading it like this. But
Rabbi,
just to simplify things, yes, Ben.
How do you spell natin or matin, whatever word you use?
Mem tes yud nun. From the word noite,
okay.
The root
I wrote
would be
noite, but I didn't know how matin is spelled.
Mem tes yud nun.
Okay.
So just to simplify things, I just want to reiterate what we're dealing with here. The issue that we're dealing with is where to include Havdalah when it's a holiday on a Saturday night. Where do you include that Havdalah paragraph? That's what we're trying to figure out. And the Gemara assumes, and maybe more than assumes, maybe is sure, maybe it assumes that we should follow Rabbi Eliezer's view and recite the paragraph of the Havdalah in the prayers in the end of the Shemona Esrei by the Moedim. That's what the Gemara is understanding. And it's dealing with the issue of why do we say halacha is like Rabbi Eliezer? Why don't we just say that, everyone should do it this way? Why does it specifically say halacha? Halacha implies someone argues. Does anyone really argue on this? Not exactly. And then the conclusion of the Gemara continues and discusses what exactly is the terminology that was used regarding this halacha. Did they use the word halachas like Rabbi Eliezer? Did they use the word matin like Rabbi Eliezer? Did they say nirin to Rabbi Eliezer? And then there's a fourth term that I didn't translate yet, and now I'll translate it. It's called moedim. They agreed to Rabbi Eliezer. The rabbis agreed to Rabbi Eliezer, and they submit to his view, at least in this scenario. And so that would be the word moedim. And so now we're going to see that there is a teaching in a base medrash of the different rabbis of how they heard this teaching. And so we're going to now read that inside the Itmar. So let's see, we're on page 33b, and we're on approximately 15 lines from the top. The Itmar, the last word on the line, the Itmar, because we learned in the base medrash, Rabbi Yitzchak bar Avdimi Amar Mishmei Rabbeinu Mishum Rabbeinu. Rabbi Yitzchak bar Avdimi said in the name of Rabbeinu. Now, who is Rabbeinu? it sometimes refers to Rav and sometimes refers to Rebbe. And the problem is if it refers to Rav, it's going to be a contradiction later. So let's just translate. There are different opinions how to translate it. Let's just translate it. It refers to Rebbe Yehuda Hanassi, the author of the Mishnah. So Rebbe, Rabbi Yitzchak bar Avdimi said in the name of Rebbe, Rabbeinu, that halacha, the word should be halacha. Va'amrila, and some say matin. And some say they heard this, that he said this teaching with the word matin, that we lean towards that opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Moedim. Rabbi Yochanan says that Moedim, the rabbis agreed to Rabbi Eliezer. And there's no argument at all. And on a Saturday night, that's a holiday. Rabbi Chia bar Abba Amar Nirin. Rabbi Chia bar Abba says, listen, it seems like Rabbi Eliezer on a Saturday night that falls on a holiday, but we aren't sure. We're not going to tell someone to do this. When a person does it, we say, yeah, that was fine.
Rabbi.
Yeah.
The words that the matin and nirim,
yeah,
are those words new Hebrew words that are just that just came up because of this whole dispute?
So they're not new. They're not new Hebrew words. We're just trying to develop a halachic dictionary, a dictionary of clarifying the term that's supposed to be used. Okay. What term? In other words, we're setting the rules now of what these terms refer specifically to. We know these words; they're common words.
Okay.
But when you use them when a rabbinic verdict uses those words, what specifically do those words mean?
We're clarifying what the rabbi said is right. what you're saying.
Clarifying exactly how the rabbi said the words.
Okay.
So in any event, the bottom line is that according to all these views, on a Saturday night that falls on a holiday, you end up reciting it in the moedim, in the end, because we don't know either we don't know, we're not sure, we assume, we estimate, or we are sure. But however it is, that would be seemingly the way to do it. Now, the Gemara continues, and then we'll see that actually no, there is another option, and that is actually the option that we all follow. So if you think that the Gemara is over here, it's not. Yes, Ben.
I wanted to say I wrote Nirin as close, but it looks like now I see it's Nirim, which is looks like.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, I should clarify that there is one view that says, when the opinion that says Nirin, maybe this is the common way of understanding it, the opinion that says Nirin actually would hold that you really should not do this, but if you did it, it's okay. And according to that view, it would seem like the rabbis would have to be arguing on Rebbe Eliezer, at least in a preferable way. You should follow the rabbis and just recite it in the intermediate blessing, even though it's not the blessing of knowledge, nevertheless, just add it there. That would be the view of Nirin. So Nirin would be like, if you did it, it's okay, but it's not, it seems that it's okay, but it's not that you should follow it as a halachic preferable way to do things. But if you did it, it's okay. Now, so these are the different terms that the Gemara is using, and again, it's touching on the issue of the fact that we don't have so much clarity as to this scenario. What should you do? We have some problems fitting the Havdalah in a Yom Tov Amidah, in the Yom Tov Shmona Esrei. So the Gemara then says, Amar Reb Zera, Nekoit de Rabbi Chia bar Abba biyodach. Take whatever Rabbi Chia bar Abba says, this last view, Nirin, take what he says, and his view is really a very accepted view. Why is Rabbi Chia bar Abba's view should be the one the most accepted? Well, because Rabbi Chia bar Abba said things in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, and Rabbi Yochanan was his teacher. Now, Rabbi Yochanan, being that he was his teacher, and Rabbi Chia bar Abba was so exact in his words, he probably was correct in repeating his teacher's words more than the other students who repeated Rabbi Yochanan's words. So we just mentioned that in the Beis Medrash there was a Rav Yitzchak bar Rav Dimi said in the name of Rebbe, and we said two versions of that, either halacha or matin, and then we had two versions in Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan himself says moedim, which means the brisa. Whoever is mentioning the brisa, they think Rabbi Yochanan said this, and Rabbi Chia bar Abba argues and says, no, Rabbi Yochanan didn't say the word moedim, he said the word nirin. So Rabbi Zera says, Rabbi Chia bar Abba, he's probably the most exact in his repeating his teacher's wording, and he was very exact when he learned and heard the teachings from the mouth of his Rebbe, of his master, in a very clear way. And he similar to Rava de Pumpadisa, like Rava. I'm sorry, Rechava, like Rechava of Pumpadisa, like Rechava, who was a great scholar, and in Pumpadisa, he was also very exact in repeating things from his Rebbe. The Amar Rechava, Amar Rebbe Yehuda, Rechava said in the name of either Rebbe Yehuda or Rav Yehuda, even if you learn that it's Rebbe Yehuda, the reason it's calling Rebbe because this was his main teacher, Rebbe. But really, this is Rav Yehuda, not Rebbe Yehuda. But in any event, he said in the name of his teacher, Har Habayis Stav Kaful Haya. Har Habayis, the mountain around the Beis Hamikdash, it had 2 rows of benches for people to sit down. V'haya stav lefnimi stav. 1 row surrounded the other row of benches. Now, the reason why the Gemara brings this is to tell us that he was so exact how to say things that he did not want to use the common term, which was itztava. Itztava was the common term that was used when it comes to benches. And he didn't want to use that term because his Rebbe, his teacher, used this other term. And since his Rebbe used this other term called stav, he wanted to say it exactly like his teacher, the term that his teacher used. And therefore, he mentioned about these benches that surrounded the Har Habayis, the Temple Mount, to give, mainly, I guess it was for sitting and for rain. They had roofs on these benches. And so even though they normally use the term itztava in the Talmud, and that was maybe the normal language, but Rechava used the word stav because he was so exact in using his teacher's language. So that same idea is with that same exactness was Reb Chia bar Abba. So the Gemara is thinking that Reb Chia bar Abba, who says in the previous statement, Nirin, that we should assume is the correct version of Reb Yochanan's statement. That's what the Reb Zera tells us. Now the Gemara says, Amar Reb Yosef. Rabbi Yosef says, "Ana loy hayadana v'loy hayadana." I don't know about the words of this one, and I don't know about the words of that one. I don't know what this rabbi said. I don't know if I can't correct anyone about what the rabbis. This rabbi said this word, and that rabbi said that word. But Ella the Rav Ushmuel Yadana. But I do know what Rav and Shmuel said, and this is a very important piece because this is the final. This is how we follow the Takinu Lon Marganisa de Bavel that they established regarding Havdalah on a Saturday night that falls on a holiday. They established for us in a marganisa is like a precious gem. They established for us a precious gem in Bavel, which is like a special wording of the Havdalah in Bavel. They established this for us. And what is that? What is the wording? V'toidienu Hashem Elokeinu. Hashem lets us know, he gives us knowledge. Es mishpatei tzidkecha, your righteous judgments. V'talamdeinu la'asos chukei reteinecha, and you taught us to do the statutes of your will. V'tanchilenu zmanei sasain, and you inherited us times of joy. V'chagei nidava, in holidays of gifts, gift holidays. Some want to say this means the extra day of exile, that we celebrate the holiday on the additional day of in the diaspora, when that's what this refers to, the Chagei Nedava, extra gift holidays. In other words, an extra day to the holiday. You gave us this, Vaterishenu Kedusha Shabbos, and you inherited us the holiness of Shabbos, so Chvoid Mayeh, and the glory of the holiday, the Chagigas HaRegel, and the celebration of the Regel, of the special holiday. Bein Kedusha Shabbos L'Kedushas Yom Tov Hivdalta, you've separated between the two holies, the holy of Shabbos and the holy of Yom Tov. Ves Yom HaShvi'i, and the seventh day you separated Misheshis Hamaisa Kidashta, you made holy from the 6 days of creation. Hivdalta, you separated Bekidashta and have sanctified as Amcha Yisrael, your nation Israel, Bekdusha Secha, with your holiness. You've made us holy with your holiness. And then Vatitan Lanu Chulu, then you continue with the middle blessing of the Shemona Esrei of the holiday. So that is how the Gemara concludes that Rav and Shmuel established they had a text that they established, and that is the common text that is used today in our davening. Now, I wonder in Eretz Yisrael, there is reason to say, based on this, that maybe only outside of Israel do we have the text that we use. Maybe in Israel, I wonder if it's exactly the same. There are some differences in Israel between, like, the reading of the Torah here in outside of Israel. In the diaspora, there were differences in the reading. For example, on Sukkot, outside in the intermediate days of Sukkot, or even on Shabbos, the maftir, the fourth aliyah is a little different. I wonder if there are different opinions. In other words, Rav and Shmuel established this wording for chutz la'aretz, for outside of Israel, and the reason I'm telling you this is because this is what they mentioned, Marganisa Bebavel, that this statement that Rabbi Yosef says, he says they established the a pearl or a precious gem in Bavel, they establish it for here, implying like maybe they didn't establish it really for Israel. So I'm just wondering, if there is a different. I'd like to pull out a siddur just see. If in Israel they have
the last idea they are talking about the first blessing of the Shmoneh Esrei, to add it to the first blessing.
Again, we're talking about in the Ma'ariv for holidays.
Right.
The holiday Shmoneh Esrei. So this would be for Shalish Regalim. Where to include and what the wording is to include the Havdalah from Shabbos. And let's just take a look here.
So what I got was to add it to the first blessing, because the 3 first blessings are still said on the holiday Shabbat too.
Yeah, I wonder if there is if there's any other views about in Israel if you recite something different, because again our Gemara emphasizes that this is specifically established in Bavel for the Babylonian, and it does, according to that, it's understandable why they added that extra wording for thanking Hashem for the extra day of exile of holiday in exile. In any event, either way, that is our, here outside of Israel for sure, this is the common halacha, and probably in Israel as well. I don't see any difference. So I don't see it quoted any other version or any other option. So it would seem like this applies.
Susan, you're on mute.
Once they established it in outside of Israel, I guess they established it in Israel as well.
Rabbi.
Yes, Susan.
It says in the Steinsaltz, one may not add to the prayers, praises of God that were incorporated into the formula of the Amidah prayer for the reasons enumerated by Rabbi Harina in the Gemara. However, in personal private pleas, one is permitted. So there's a huge difference between if you're in the minyan or if you're at home.
I see you want us to continue moving forward because
No,
you're on the next.
not that.
You're on the next Gemara.
No, it's not. It's still 33b.
I know, but I didn't get to the end of 33b, and
Right,
you're going towards the end.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. I see you want to go forward. That's okay.
The
Give me
last
a little
2
push.
lines are not from this Gemara.
Sorry.
Okay. So so I guess it seems I'm just looking in the back of this Gemara. It has the halacha. It seems like there's no difference between Israel. Okay, so now we're going to continue with the Mishnah. The next Mishnah, the Mishnah tells us about reciting in the davening, reciting certain words that seem like they're praises to Hashem,
But they're not.
but there is reason why they're not acceptable.
Right.
Let's read the Mishnah. We're now at the Mishnah. We're on page 33b. Ha'omer al kan sipur yagiu rachamecha. A person who says while he's davening in the Shmoneh Esrei, if he says in the Shmoneh Esrei, on the nest, on a bird's nest, Hashem's mercy reaches. And what that means is that Hashem has mercy and doesn't want us to take away the mother bird. Don't take away the mother bird on its babies. That would be cruel, and instead you cause it to fly away, and then you could take the eggs. but you wouldn't take the mother bird away from its babies. So if a person says that, or bial toiv yizocher shemecha, or a person says for good things God's name should be praised, or if a person says moidim moidim, thank him, we thank you, moidim moidim. So he says a double terminology of moidim. So this also, meshaskin oisoi, we quiet him down. This is inappropriate. So again, he's saying words that seem to be praises of Hashem, but the Mishnah tells us, no, this is not acceptable. Rashi over here on the Mishnah tells us that a person wants to imply like they're praising Hashem so abundantly, and they're adding these words that sound so nice. Hashem has such mercy on the birds, and for all the good, we want to thank Hashem for the good, and things like that. Moidim, we thank you, The Mishnah says, nope, this is not acceptable. And now the Gemara will try to explain, will share with us the reason. So the Gemara tells us that Bishleima moidim neshaskin oisai, it's good, moidim, that we do quiet a person down from reciting moidim. Person says, we thank you. Why? Mishum demechaze kishtei reshuyas. It implies, if a person says, we thank you, guess what it implies? It implies like they don't just believe in God, but they believe in some other idol as well. And therefore, they're saying it twice. We believe you, we thank you, Hashem, and we thank some other deity.
Entity.
And therefore, right, it's prohibited. Even though you don't have that in mind, maybe, but it looks like it. It's mechazei kishtei reshuyos. It looks like two deities. And v'al toiv yizocher shemecha, and for good, may your name be mentioned and remembered, implies mashma al hatoiva v'lei al hara. It implies that you would thank Hashem for good things and not for the bad things. V'tanan, and we learned in a Mishnah, chayav adam levarich al hara. A person is obligated to recite a blessing for the bad things, kashem shem avarech al hatoiva, just like he recites a blessing for the good things. So what that means is that we don't really know what's good and what's bad. You could make $1 million, and really that's the worst thing for you, because now you're going to get paranoid. People are trying to steal it. You're going to need to see a psychiatrist. You're going to need to, who knows, $1 million, people are going to start stealing from you. You're going to have people knocking on your door all day. You never know. Could be a great thing, but it could be a terrible thing, And then a person, chas v'shalom, could get sick, but it could be the best thing for them because they're sick. They have no, they don't get into issues, and they don't end up, falling into some trap that some of their friends fell into, and they ended up being sick, and everything worked out good. And they got better after a few weeks, and everything is perfect. In the meantime, their friends got into trouble because they did something. This person got sick. He never was part of it. I'm just throwing an example. So we just know that whatever Hashem does for us is good. That's what we know. If a person says they're going to thank Hashem for the good things and not for the bad things, they're basically going against their faith in Hashem and trusting that everything from Hashem is good. Yes, Ben.
I see in the Steinsaltz, it says about modim that the reason you quiet him down is because you only say modim on the tzipor. but not on the offsprings. And that is something that is, you're not really thanking God for both of them, only for the tzipor.
I'm not sure.
That's what I'm getting from the Steinsaltz.
I'll have to take a look or something. I don't have the Steinsaltz, but I'll have to look, see online. Okay, so the Gemara continues, and it says, Ella al kan sipar yagir rachamecha my time. What would the reason be that when a person says that Hashem has mercy on the bird's nest, Hashem's mercy reaches, why would that be such a bad thing to say? What would be so wrong? So pligi ba trei amayroim b'ma'arava. The two Amayroim, again, Amayroim lived from the year 300 to 5, from the year 200 to 500 CE, and they are the authors of the Talmud. Before them was the authors of the Mishnah, and the Mishnah was compiled approximately the year 200, and after that was the Talmud, and Talmud was the Talmudic rabbis lived, and then in the year 500 the Talmud was compiled, approximately. So the rabbis of the Amayroim, the later rabbis, they argued in Eretz Yisrael. In other words, there were two areas where there were two main areas where these rabbis lived. They either lived in Israel or they lived in Babylon. These were the two major hubs of Jewish life, either Babylon and Israel. And in Babylon itself, there were a number of different cities. In Israel as well, there were probably different cities where the different groups of rabbis congregated. But the two main hubs were Eretz Yisrael and Babylon. So here, these are the Amayroim of Ma'arava, of the West. The West means Israel. So the two, they argued there. Who were the names? Rabbi Yossi bar Ravin, Rabbi Yossi bar Zvida. Rabbi Yossi bar Ravin and Rabbi Yossi bar Zvida, they both argued. Chad Amar, one of them explained the reason for this law. Mipnei shematel kina, because you are placing jealousy in Maaseh Bereshis, in the creation, in the works of creation. And what does that mean? That you're saying that Hashem has mercy only on the birds. What do you think the other animals are going to start? That would cause jealousy for the other animals. That you're implying like God doesn't have so much mercy on these other animals. The other animals, you don't have a prohibition of doing this type of a thing, of taking the mother and slaughtering it or something. But the birds, there is a prohibition. You're implying, you're making a big deal in whether you're causing there to be jealousy in the creations. Now, one of the commentaries explains that it's not that the animals now are going to hear you and they're going to be jealous, but it's more that your words that sound like words of praise are not exactly praise, because what you're really saying is that Hashem is merciful to the birds, but he's not merciful to the animals. He's not merciful to the fish. He's merciful to the birds. He's not merciful to the wild, to the chayas. He's merciful to the birds. You're implying that Hashem is not merciful to everything. So what you're doing is reciting something that's not honor to Hashem. Yes, Ben.
But we know that Hashem is merciful to the cows, that you cannot, the kosher law that you cannot eat the mother and the son at the same time.
Correct.
I mean the milk and from the mother and the baby. So he's merciful to other animals too. So this statement is not really full statement.
Well, my thought is that statement would fall into a very similar category, because what you end up doing by saying things like that is you're basically saying that Hashem has mercy on these animals but he doesn't have mercy on fish, because a fish that was the mother and the child of the fish, you could kill in the same day. So what you're implying, in other words, saying something like that implies something negative about other animals. And the same thing is when you're saying God has mercy on birds, but he doesn't have mercy on animals, and you're saying no, really Hashem does have mercy on animals. It's also not exact, because what you're saying is Hashem has mercy in this area, which is that you can't take away the mother bird from her children. But it doesn't say that about that specific law. It doesn't say about a cow. So you could take a cow from its child. You could take it away.
But I think here he shows preference to the mother. He shows preference to the cow, the mother. He also shows preference to a woman if she has trouble in birth, that you save the woman, I think, rather than the baby, isn't it?
Oh, I don't.
So the point is, I'm not really sure, what you're getting at, because ultimately what comes out is that there are going to be differences between these animals and those animals. And basically what you're going to end up saying is God is more merciful to these and not merciful as much to those. So even if you find some type of mercy that there is, but what you're ending up saying is, God is merciful to mothers, not merciful to children, merciful to this mother, not less merciful to that mother. Yeah, he's merciful to both, but he's more merciful to these, so he's not so merciful to the others. Whatever you're going to say is going to be something negative. Better don't say anything.
Okay.
So then comes, so now we have this one explanation. Now comes the next explanation of another rabbi of the West, and this is V'chad Omar. And the other one says, the other rabbi says, Mipnei she'oisa midosav shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu rachamim. He's making the measures, the mitzvahs of Hashem, as if it's all about mercy. And in truth, ve'enon ela gzeiros, really Hashem's laws and statutes are not because of mercy, at least the way we understand it, but rather they are decrees from Hashem, that we are Hashem's people. We have to follow his commandments. And even in mitzvahs that we don't understand the laws, we also have to follow. So don't think that because we see a little mercifulness in this type of mitzvah, that's the reason for the mitzvah. There's much deeper reasons for the mitzvahs than our limited understanding of what it means to do to fulfill this mitzvah. Our limited understanding thinks we understand the reason. Oh, it's all about mercy. We got it. So we're so wrong to even to think like that our mind understands the depth of the mitzvah. We understand such a tiny little speck of the surface of the mitzvah. And so therefore, a person who says that Hashem has mercy, his mercy reaches the bird's nest, he's really missing the whole point of the mitzvahs, and the meaning that there's much more depth to the mitzvahs than what comes to the to the surface, and that we think we understand. And so because of all these reasons, a person should not say any of these ideas, especially in his really we're talking about in his davening. In his davening, you shouldn't say these type of things. You're trying to get mercy from Hashem, but in the end, you're insulting Hashem. In the end, you're minimizing Hashem's greatness. Yes. Any questions? Yes, not. Okay.
Rabbi.
Yes, Moshe. You're gonna.
1 second. Yeah, hold on. Rachmanut is not considered part of the tefillah, you're saying, or it doesn't have it has less impact than other aspects of the tefillah?
Well, your wording of rachamim is an insult. When you say Hashem has mercifulness because of this, you're really insulting Hashem. Because what you're saying is he's not merciful to those. He's only merciful to these. You're saying he's merciful, in this scenario. He's good sometimes. Hashem is good to me sometimes. He's not good to me always. I understand the mitzvahs and I understand the full depth of Hashem's mitzvahs. There's no more depth than my understanding. And it's all about mercy. The mitzvah is all about mercy. Yeah. Well, that's an insult to Hashem. The mitzvahs have much more depth than we can imagine. So the point, that's the real point. Yes, Susan.
What is the number of the Gemara?
I think the thing that is kind of bothering me is that we're talking about saying something twice, that it's making, we're saying we're not respecting and we're not showing God that he's everlasting. Then you say that we don't understand God and we have no business. The reason that they put a bird's nest is only an example. It's not a specific thing. It's only to say you don't take the eggs away from the mother. Okay? This is not about a bird. It's about.
I'm not sure, Susan. Could you just tell us what is your goal? I don't know what you're saying. Just tell us what you're asking a question, or you want to say something, an insight.
Just tell me that this whole discussion is a generalized, and it's kind of bothering me that we're even saying, I don't know, this whole discussion is bothering me. We're not showing respect to Hashem by I guess asking or disputing what you're saying. It's bothering me.
So I guess what's bothering you is the fact that someone would have the audacity to use these words about Hashem. So that's what the Mishnah says, that we have to quiet someone who does that. We have to quiet them down. Okay. So now the Gemara continues and it says, Mahu denochas kamei derabba. Person went down as a shliach tzibor, as a person who was going to lead the congregation in prayer in front of Rabbah. And there is a term that you go down, yored lefnei hativa, you go down. Nachis is another word for going down. And the reason is because when a person davens for the congregation, he's supposed to daven from the depth, and which means from a low place. And there used to be a custom, I don't think nowadays you find it too much, but there used to be a custom that there was actually a step lower, that the cantor would be lower, like a step down in the one step lower, because he's leading the congregation and he's supposed to, in prayer is supposed to be from the depth, from a level of humility. Yes, Yehuda.
Yeah, in some shuls, there's actually a platform where the chazan steps up.
Do you mean the bima? Because the bima, that's not really for the chazan. That's to read the Torah.
Well, but also the chazan.
I guess you're right in Sephardic shuls. But in most Ashkenazic shuls, the bima is really for the Torah reading, and the chazan really is in the front of the shul. The bima is always in the middle, and the chazan is mainly in the front of the shul. And I don't think I've seen like that the chazan has a platform that's elevated. Anyone else?
Rabbi.
Yes, Moshe.
I want to mention there was a famous rabbi. I forgot who it was. He says that the Mount Sinai that the Torah was given not it wasn't, the mountain was not supposed to be too high and it was not supposed to be too low, that it was given at just in between, that it was not given. Hashem didn't intend the mountain to be too high and he didn't want it to be too low, but he wanted just to be in between,
Well, a mountain, it's the lowest mountain. Mochach mikol Turayim, the lowest of all the mountains, but he wanted a mountain. but also the
that
lowest.
amount, but he didn't want to be too high and he didn't want to be too low.
Right. Well, he
To be too humble and he not to be too high because
right.
otherwise.
Okay. Anyway, in any event, Yehuda, yeah, I'm not sure. We'll have to look into the fact that Sephardic shuls. You're asking a good question, Yehuda. That Sephardic shuls, I think the chazan does stand on the bima. That is a little surprising. That we'll have to look into. In any event, the official rule is yoyred. If you ever learn Mishnayos, very often you see this term yoyred lefnei hateva, the one who goes down in front of the ark, and that refers to the chazan. The cantor is supposed to always be on the on a low platform, on a low level. So the term here is used. He went down before Rabbah, meaning he was going to lead the congregation. V'yamar, and he said, "Ato chastal kan tzipor, you have mercy on the nest of a bird. Ato chus v'rachim aleinu, have mercy on us." Amar Rabbah said, "Kama yoda haitzurba mirabonan l'ratzuye l'mare." How much of knowledge? What a scholar that he knows how to appease and honor and praise his master. L'ratzuye l'mare. He knows how to praise his master. Look at this. This is amazing. Look at this chazan we got. So Amar le Abaye told back to his teacher, to Rabbah. He says, "You're praising this guy? What a sinner! You were supposed to quiet him down. He's not doing the right thing." But Rabbah Nami, and Rabbah also, the reason why he the reason why Rabbah said that, so the Gemara explains, is l'chadude la'abaye hu deboy. He really did not mean to give this guy praise. He was sort of testing the waters to see if Abaye was was sharp to answer back that this is not allowed. Mishaskin, I say. So he sort of tested him by praising the person and hearing if Abaye would fight back, and so it's called l'chaduye la'abaye, to sharpen Abaye. That's what he was trying to do. There was a rabbi in that ran a yeshiva, and he used to give these very deep insights. And so they used to tell him, it's not correct. Your insight is very deep, but it's not exactly it doesn't really fit. Yeah. So he would say, no, l'chadude, it's to sharpen the minds of my students. So anyway, yes, Susan.
I take back what I said. Now I see what the whole point of this.
Oh, okay, fine.
All right, now I totally understand it.
Everyone have a wonderful day. We'll see you later, Mitzvah Hashem.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.